In this video, we'll cover everything that you need to know to jump into New World and get your adventure started. We'll be covering things like factions and faction influence, PvE, PvP, gathering, crafting, equipment and gear, classes and progression, and loads more. There's quite a lot of different topics to cover, so feel free to use the YouTube chapters if you're looking for a specific topic. New World is a one-off payment to buy with no monthly subscription, and it's being developed by Amazon Games. I put all this information together during the New World beta, so just keep in mind that on the full game launch, some information may slightly differ. If you want to be an absolute legend and support the channel, then make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. My name is Azzavhar or Azza. Now let's get into the video. PvE, or Player versus Environment. New World takes place in Eternum, which is a supernatural island home to a dark power. Throughout your adventures, you'll fight not only wildlife, but also a variety of undead and supernatural enemies. There's 4 major enemy factions in New World. You've got the Lost, which are zombie-like creatures. You've got the Angry Earth, which are beasts and other elements of nature. The Ancients, which are an old civilization. And the Corrupted, who have been possessed by Azzavhar. Azzavhar is a form of magic that comes from the island. At the start of New World, you'll spawn in one of the 4 starting locations, which are First Light, Windswood, Monarch's Bluffs, or Everfall. Once you've carried out the first few quests, the storyline will eventually lead to the same place, so don't worry too much about the starter location that you were given, just keep following the quest line. We'll take a look at a few different PvE things that we can do. First, let's look at expeditions, otherwise known as dungeons. As of this time, New World has 6 expeditions, which are Amrine Temple, Garden of Genesis, Lazarus Instrumentality, Dynasty Shipyard, Shattered Obelisk, and the Depths. Expeditions are instance content meant for a group of between 3 to 5 players. They've got challenging boss fights, and the action combat really adds to the excitement of the battles. To enter an expedition, at least one player in the party needs to have a tuning orb. As you follow the main storyline quest of the game, you will be given 1 tuning orb to allow you to be able to access that expedition. You will be able to craft more tuning orbs using the stone masonry skill. You can run the expedition multiple times, and there's usually a repeatable quest that goes along with the expedition, so make sure that you're able to craft more tuning orbs if you want to run this expedition multiple times. Another PvE mode that you've got is called Invasions. Invasions are open to any players level 50 or above. You do have to sign up for it, and players are picked at random. 50 players will be selected to play, and 10 of them will be chosen by the governor of that territory. Invasions happen when the corruption becomes too strong in a particular territory, which is roughly every 4 days. There'll be waves and waves of corrupted attacking the fort, and these 50 players will need to defend it. If the fort falls, the settlement will lose upgrades such as crafting stations or fort upgrades. During the invasion, you'll face 8 waves of corrupted. These will gradually get more difficult as the match goes on. There'll even be bosses that you need to take out. You'll need to prevent the corrupted from breaching the gates and taking the fort. You can also do something called arenas, where you'll have a set amount of time to defeat the boss of the arena. If you don't defeat the boss of the arena in time, you'll be teleported outside, so make sure that you're prepared before you go in. In order to access the arena, you'll need a special key. In order to get this key, you'll need to slay particular enemies in New World and dig through the loot that they drop. And when you do get this special key, it also comes with the coordinates on where you can use it. If one player with the arena key uses that at the arena entrance, the entire group will be teleported inside the arena, as long as they're nearby. In one of these arenas, you'll be fighting the Spriggan. The Spriggan won't be defeated so easily. Next, we'll talk about Corrupted Breaches. Corrupted Breaches are world events that appear in territories when they become too corrupted. You'll have to clear waves of enemies and then finally seal the breach using the Azzavhar staff. You'll get the Azzavhar staff by carrying out the main storyline quests. It's usually recommended to take on these breaches as a group, although if you're careful, you might be able to take out the smaller breaches solo. If you successfully seal a breach, you'll be rewarded with a corrupted loot chest. On top of that, you've also got the standard PvE things, such as killing mobs, gathering, crafting, completing the main story quests, side quests, town projects, or faction missions. You'll pick up a lot of missions and quests in towns and settlements, and I'd recommend picking a bunch of those up, heading out onto your adventures, because a lot of quests and town projects that you pick up from a settlement are usually round about the same area on the map, so you'll get to complete a bunch of those at the same time. There are 3 factions in New World, and these form the basis of PvP and territory control. In each territory, you'll have your faction's influence, and you'll have a separate thing which is your character's territory standing. In this section, we'll cover both of those. You'll have to complete a series of quests and be a minimum level of 10 to join a faction. The 3 factions are the Marauders, which are a military-style faction, the Syndicate, which is a secretive-style faction, and the Covenant, which is kind of like a Holy Crusade-style faction. You do have the option to switch faction every 120 days. Doing so will reset your faction rank and tokens. Faction influence is all about PvP. You would do things like your faction's missions, which can be classed as PvP missions or PvE missions, and take part in open world PvP in order to gain your faction's influence in that territory. Factions will have a faction influence over each territory. The benefit of having your faction influence a territory or multiple territories is the following bonuses: more resources from gathering, chance to gain higher quality items when crafting, discount for fast traveling, global luck, remote storage access, and the ability to pick up free extra resources from your settlements. And then you also have territory standing, and territory standing is more like your character's fame within that particular territory. So the more things that you do in that territory, the more famous your character becomes, or the higher your standing is. To raise your character's standing in a territory, you do things like killing mobs, mining nodes, chopping down trees, gathering, completing projects on the town project board, completing quests from NPCs, crafting, and so on. And as you level up your standing within that territory, you can then use those standing points to get yourself things like lower taxes, increased gathering speeds, increased EXP gain whilst in that territory, and more. You've also got PvP, which is a massive part of New World. You've got open world PvP as well as the organized PvP battles. With the open world PvP, you have the option to flag yourself on or off for PvP. You can only change this flag when you're inside a settlement. If you've got your PvP flag on, it gives you 30 seconds grace period after leaving a settlement before the actual PvP can take place. This is to stop players getting ganked as soon as they leave the settlement. If PvP is not your thing, you have the option to completely turn off PvP, and you never have to take part in it if you don't want to. If you do have your PvP flag on, the game will actually give you a small percentage increase to experience points gained. This provides an incentive for players to have the PvP flag on. The only drawback is if you actually die, then your equipment will lose some durability, so you'll need to spend some gold and some repair parts to repair it. The PvP is very skill based because of the action combat nature of the game. For example, if someone is casting a spell towards you, you can actually dodge roll out the way and completely avoid it. You can pick up PvP faction missions from your faction leader in the settlement. These PvP missions will send players to specific locations to carry out various tasks. During these PvP faction missions, you will have to have your PvP flag on and you cannot turn it off. If you do die whilst carrying out these missions, it will fail the mission and you'll need to go back to the NPC faction leader to pick up the quest again. You also can't teleport whilst these missions are active, otherwise it will fail the mission as well. Carrying out these faction PvP missions will also reward you with a faction currency, and you can spend this currency on weapons, armor, and other various items. There's also a mode called Outpost Rush, which is a 20 versus 20 battleground, where 2 sides fight over 3 outposts and several objectives. You have to be level 60 to sign up for Outpost Rush, and you can queue up solo or as a group of up to 5 players. The goal of Outpost Rush is to reach 1,000 points for your team. Outposts generate 1 point every 3 seconds, and each player kill rewards 1 point. You can also gather resources from around the map to upgrade or build additional structures and defenses, such as gates, protection wards, and siege weapons. There's several objectives on the map that allow players to summon powerful allies or fight over bosses that give strategic buffs when killed. You've also got a PvP mode called War, which is 50 versus 50. It's essentially a attack and defend mode, where the defenders will have to hold their fort for 30 minutes, and the attackers will need to break through and take the fort. Both attackers and defenders will have a range of siege weapons, such as cannons, mines, and explosive barrels. Wars will take place at specific time windows set by the defending company, or guild. In this game, guilds are called companies. Before you can wage war on another faction's territory, you must weaken that territory to a point where it's vulnerable enough to have war declared on it. The wars are set at specific times so that it removes the potential for offline raiding. And it also stops the wars from taking place at inconvenient hours where the majority of players might be offline. New World has a classless system, which essentially means you can do whatever you want to with your character's progression. Whilst you do gain experience points and level up, you'll be able to freely put your attribute points into whatever statistic that you want to, as well as your weapon level up skill points into whichever weapon you choose to use. You have a main overall character level, and pretty much most things that you do in the game will contribute experience points towards that. For example, killing enemies, completing corrupted breaches, expeditions otherwise known as dungeons, gathering, crafting, completing main story quests, completing side quests, town projects and faction missions. Weapon mastery improves through the usage of a particular weapon, and there's 38 skills to unlock for each weapon. Each time that you kill a monster using that weapon, it will gain experience points specific to that weapon. When you gain a level in that weapon, you'll gain a skill point, and then you'll be able to choose which of the skills from the skill tree that you want to unlock. With each weapon, you'll be able to choose from 2 different skill trees, although you'll have a set number of skill points to use, so you won't be able to unlock every single skill from both of these skill trees, so make sure to pick carefully. You'll be able to spend 19 skill points, and there's 19 nodes in each skill tree, so you could choose to have all 19 from the left hand tree or all 19 from the right hand tree, or you could choose to have a hybrid and have a mix of both. To be able to select the last skill at the bottom of that skill tree, you'll need to put in at least 10 points into that one particular skill tree. So essentially you can create your own class, or you can stick to the more traditional style classes. There's absolutely humongous amount of variation that you can do with these classes. You even have the option to mix it up with light armor, medium armor and heavy armor, and each of these 3 different armor weights have their pros and cons. In your character panel, it'll show you if you're currently light, medium or heavy equipment load. So if you have a light equipment load, you'll do a massive dodge roll out of the way. If you have a medium equipment load, you'll do a jump out of the way. And if you have a heavy equipment load, you'll do kind of a slow sidestep. You can mix and match different types of armor to help create whatever you're aiming to achieve, so feel free to get creative and do whatever works for you. You also have the ability to choose from weapon slot 1 and weapon slot 2, and you can easily swap between slot 1 and slot 2 during combat, so you'll be able to create a class that suits your playstyle. For example, you could have sword and shield in weapon slot 1 and a life staff in weapon slot 2, so you'll be able to hack and slash with a sword, you can defend with your shield, and if things get a little bit spicy, you can place down a healing spell to restore your HP. If you wanted to, you could grind up every single weapon to its maximum level, and then you can choose whichever 2 weapons you want to use at any time. As you level up your character's main level, you'll be able to spend your attribute points in the following categories: strength, dexterity, intelligence, focus, and constitution. The effectiveness of a weapon is governed by one main stat. For example, the life staff is mainly governed by focus, and the sword and shield is mainly governed by strength. Constitution will govern the amount of HP that you have. Attributes have thresholds at which they provide additional bonuses. For example, if you spend 50 points in strength, you gain 15% additional damage to melee light attacks, as well as a 10% mining speed bonus. The attribute point thresholds are every 50 points, for example 50, 100, 150 and so on. It's also possible to respec your attribute points for free in the early game. You can also respec in the later game, but you'll have to pay an in-game currency fee. You'll still be able to play as your traditional MMORPG classes, such as tank, DPS or healer. You'll just need to use the relevant weapon, put your attribute points into the relevant attributes, and put your skill points into the relevant skills on the skill tree. Make sure to have a play around and get a feel for all the weapons. At the time of making this video, there's 11 weapons to choose from, which are sword and shield, rapier, hatchet, spear, great axe, warhammer, bow, musket, fire staff, life staff, and ice gauntlet. You can also equip rings, as well as a side satchel, which will increase your character's carry weight. You'll also be able to use consumables such as potions and foods. The gear score takes all things into account on that particular item. Each piece of equipment will also have its rarity tier, which are common, uncommon, rare, epic, and legendary. As well as this, some gear can also have gems slotted into them, and the gems can give bonuses such as 10% damage boost, stat increase like plus dexterity or strength, and it might also give armor bonuses such as increased durability. Settlements. There's quite a number of things that you can do inside a settlement, such as use the crafting and refining stations. You could set up a company, otherwise known as a guild, pick up quests, use the town project board, sign up for war at the war board, check in at an inn, and you can use that inn as a recall point or a teleport point. You can also buy yourself a house and spend time in that house, and you have the option to set a house as a recall point as well. Settlements require the controlling company to pay upkeep, and if the upkeep is not paid, things inside the settlement might downgrade, such as the crafting crafting and refining stations. Another reason that things might downgrade inside a settlement is if the corrupted attack, otherwise known as an invasion, and the settlement fails to defend against the corrupted invasion. You'll also have access to a storage shed, and you can place your weapons, armor, and items in that storage shed. If a settlement is conquered by an opposing company, you'll still be able to access everything inside the storage shed, so don't worry about that. Trade skills. You've got 3 main trade skills, which are crafting, refining, and gathering. Gathering skills include mining, skinning, logging, and harvesting. Refining skills are smelting, stone cutting, woodworking, leatherworking, and weaving. And the crafting professions are weaponsmithing, armoring, jewel crafting, engineering, arcana, cooking, and furnishing. With gathering, you'll be able to gather certain resources with a gathering level of 0. Let's take logging, for example. With a logging level of 0, you'll be able to cut down young trees. And if your logging level is anywhere between 0 and 49, then you won't be able to gather and cut down mature trees. As soon as you hit logging level 50, then you'll be able to collect resources from mature trees as well. As you level up these gathering levels, you'll then be able to start tracking things on your compass at the top of your screen. So this is a little bit like Skyrim, where you can start to see things on that compass, such as mining nodes, trees, wildlife, and herbs. After you've gathered your resources, you'll then need to go and refine them. For example, you can turn iron ore into iron ingots and steel ore into steel ingots. After you've done your refining, you can then do your crafting. For example, if you've got your hands on some iron ingots, you can then use those to craft iron armor or weapons. As you level up your refining and your crafting professions, you'll then unlock more recipes in the crafting lists. A bit of information about the storage shed and crafting materials. Any crafting or refining that you do in that settlement, you'll be able to use any materials that you have inside that storage shed, even if they're not physically inside your player's inventory. However, keep in mind that any items inside the storage shed are specific to that settlement. So if you wanted to use some materials for crafting and they were inside a storage shed at a different settlement, you'd need to go travel over to that other settlement and then physically bring them to the settlement where you intend to do your crafting and your refining. Or if both settlements are controlled by the same faction as you, then you'll be able to transfer items and equipment remotely between those storage sheds. However, there is a gold fee in order to do this, so just keep that in mind. I've also got a bunch of extra hints and tips. These didn't really fit into any of the other categories, so I'll put them here. New World also has Twitch TV integration, which will allow Twitch TV live streamers to interact with their viewers in-game. So if you enable Twitch TV integration and have that on whilst you're streaming, there'll be an icon that appears next to your character's nameplate in the game. So all players that see your player in the game will know that you're live on Twitch TV. There's a bunch of different options that you can choose and change within the Twitch TV options menu, so make sure to go and check that out if that's something that you're looking to do. Fast travel. With fast travel, you'll be able to travel between different settlements and fast travel shrines. If you do see a fast travel shrine on the map, make sure to go unlock that because they come in really useful throughout your adventures. You can also build yourself a camp that kind of serve as a mobile respawn point, but camps can't be placed inside settlements or inside places of interest. I'd recommend placing down a camp if you've traveled a great distance and there's no other settlements or respawn points near to you, then place yourself down a camp. So if you die, you don't have to travel all the way back to where you were. You can just respawn at the campfire. You can also set your recall point in a settlement's inn, and that's got a 1 hour cooldown on that recall. So if you're out in the open exploring and perhaps you finished a quest and you want to quickly get back to your town, just use the inn recall to instantly get back there. Or you could also choose to use a death warp. At the time of making this video, there's not too much of a drawback to using death warp. You'll just lose a little bit of durability on your equipment and it'll just cost you a little bit of gold and repair parts to repair it again. And if you're at the lower levels, you'll be going through gear quite fast, so you'll probably end up just salvaging that gear anyway. Which brings me on to my next point. You can salvage gear. Salvaging a piece of gear will give you extra repair parts, so feel free to salvage gear if you're in need of those. You can just do that from your character's menu by holding down S on your keyboard and then clicking the piece of gear. A bit of information about Azzavhar. To check how much Azzavhar you have, press tab to open your inventory and look at the bottom right of the screen. It looks like a bottle of blue liquid. You'll use Azzavhar to fast travel. You can use it to respec the mastery tree of a weapon, and you can also use it in crafting. You'll sometimes get Azzavhar as a drop for killing enemies, and you may also get it as a quest reward. Also, I just wanted to talk about healing and healing targeting. So if you're playing as a healer in New World, there's a bunch of different healer options in the menus. How this works is if you press a healing spell, it will auto-target one of your party members or an ally, and you'll notice that your casting area will automatically follow your target around. You can press the skill button again or left click to cast. You can press right click to cancel the cast, and if you're in a party or you've got multiple allies around you, you can scroll the mouse wheel and it'll scroll through your party members or allies. Once you've got your target selected, then press the skill button again or left click to cast. If you press a healing spell and it's currently following around a targeted player, you have the option of clicking the middle mouse button, and that will take away the target lock and switch it over to free aim. So if you were casting an area of effect healing spell and it was currently locked onto an ally, you could middle mouse button to then manually move that AoE spell and place that where you needed it. And if you wanted to cast that healing spell on yourself, you would press Control, and then it would auto target yourself and cast on yourself. There's also an achievement system with over 400 achievements to unlock. Some of these might grant titles and other rewards. You can also unlock your self-exclusive in-game loot by tuning into my live stream over at twitch.tv/Azzavhar. I've also got a Discord server and we talk about New World in there, as well as other video games. If you want to stay in touch with me, all of my social medias and platforms are at Azzavhar. All of these links are in the video description, so hopefully we'll see you there. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe and drop a comment. You could even share this video with someone that might find it useful. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care.